Welcome to this episode of Founded in Tech. I am your host, Mark Eckerly, and today I sit down with Simon Adel, who is the CFO of TripleLift, who is bringing the digital advertising ecosystem to the next level. On today's episode, we discuss the ins and outs of TripleLift's business model and operations, how they not only survived the COVID-19 pandemic, but also ended the year doing fairly well, all things considered. And then finally, Simon offers some tips and tricks he has come across throughout his career as tidbits of advice that could be helpful to other entrepreneurs, founders, and even beginners just starting out their career. It was great chatting with Simon about TripleLift and the exciting things that they're working on, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hello, everyone. Please join me in welcoming Simon Adel from TripleLift to the show. Simon is the CFO of TripleLift and joins us today to talk about his background, his company, TripleLift, and some of the exciting things they're working on. So welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So jumping right into it, I guess before we get to TripleLift, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background and your career, and kind of how you became the CFO of TripleLift?
Yeah, so I've been a tech startup CFO now for a long time. I can't even think, but it's a while. I'm definitely a veteran on the scene, and I'm actually Canadian. I started my career in Canada, married an American, ended up in New York City, and a couple of jobs later, I ended up at TripleLift. So I've been a CFO now since 2004 at in a few different industries, mainly financial technology, and I did a stint in energy, and now I'm in advertising.
So have you always been in the fintech space, or did you kind of see an emerging technology and you kind of wanted to hit it from the ground up, or what kind of drove you into this space?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Like my last company was selling. The last company I was at, which was a fintech company, and I was just looking around. A recruiter told me about TripleLift. I didn't know TripleLift, and honestly, like to be totally honest, at first I was like, "What do they do? Advertising, digital advertising? No, not interested. Ads are annoying. Not interested." The recruiter just kept on me. He said, "Just meet these three founders. They're the real deal. And do me a favor, meet them. I did a little bit of homework on the founders. I found out they had great reputations, and I agreed eventually to go in and meet them, and I was immediately impressed. I didn't know much about the space. It's actually a really complicated space, digital media, advertising, and it takes a while to sort of get your head around it, but it's actually really fascinating. And from sort of a CFO perspective, it doesn't get any better than this. Huge volumes, tons of data everywhere, stuff happening, deregulated, just hyper growth, especially at TripleLift. It's really a wild ride. So I've really enjoyed it, and I've actually come to realize that actually there's a really noble mission. I didn't realize at first. I didn't know anything about the industry. I just thought ads were annoying. But as I learned what ads do and how they support content and keep us from all being getting all of our news just from Facebook and other platforms like that, I came to realize that we play a really vital role in the world. So I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I could see how kind of like joining this space, it's taking on that role of a CFO. It's every day is something different, right? You're not going to have the same monotonous day in and day out activities. So and especially in such an emerging technology, an emerging space, it's always something new, right? There's always a new hurdle to tackle, a new challenge that's facing you. So it's constantly changing, which keeps things exciting, you know?
Oh, always. And, as a CFO of a smaller company, I mean, even now we're 320 people about, you do a lot more than just, finance or accounting. I would say, I mean, especially when I started at TripleLift, finance and accounting was at most half my day, realistically more like a quarter of my day, and just general operational type things were sort of the rest of it. And that continues now. A little more finance now, more specialized, we're bigger. But you have to wear so many hats, really, in almost any job in a startup environment.
In startups, yeah, you're wearing multiple hats, like you said.
Yeah.
So accounting is only a part of it. So walk me through that meeting with the founders, right? Like talk about how the company TripleLift and how you kind of hit the ground running. What really sold you on the company? What was your first experiences like?
Well, I mentioned that the founders and the rest of the management team who I met in the interview process were just seemed really, really sharp, and that's turned out to be true. So I just thought, yeah, this seems like a good horse to hitch my wagon to, and in I went. And so the first impressions, TripleLift just happens to have a certain energy about it. It always has. When I walked in, I was like, whoa, this place is crackling. And I was drawn to that. I liked it. So get in and dive in. I do joke that I could not have passed the interview process that a lot of people in more junior roles than me seem to get put through at TripleLift, like interview panels and all kinds of assignments and stuff. I didn't really have any of that. And maybe our founders, like it's their first company, amazingly. They've been this successful in their very first startup. And maybe they just didn't quite know what to ask the CFO. They certainly asked me a lot of good questions, but it was much lighter, I think it's fair to say, for me than for some of our much more junior people. So I feel grateful they didn't ask me too many hard questions. I'm not sure how I would have done.
Done if you were interviewing today.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, just walking in previously, I would not get the job at TripleLift now, but I wasn't applying for that job, right? We were just a little over 60 people. We did 15 million in top line revenue that year in 2015, and we just closed our Series B, which is a very typical time for a CFO to come on. And usually, like the investors at that point say you should have a CFO, and I think that's more or less what was happening at TripleLift at our board. And finance was outsourced at that time. Our finance function was completely outsourced, other than one of the founders was handling the finance function, but that wasn't, he's our head of technology, so that wasn't his main job. And 15 million, 60 odd people, and last year 320 people and 500 and almost 560 million. So it's been rapid growth. Yeah.
That's awesome. Great numbers there. So kind of walk us through into the TripleLift model, right? So you joined in 2015. Here we are in 2021. So roughly 6 years, 5.5, 6 years or so, with significant growth, both on the headcount side as well as operations. So kind of let's take a deep dive into what TripleLift does. What besides like digital advertising, let's kind of drill into what that is for our listeners.
Yeah, it's not the easiest to explain. So I'm going to share a screen, my screen. So we're what's called a supply side platform, or SSP, tons of acronyms. And so we consider ourselves in the ad technology, the ad tech space, right? So we're a technology provider in the advertising space. We don't actually do advertising ourselves per se. So I'll share my screen here. And so here's somebody on a phone, and this person's gone to Southern Living, which is a website, and Southern Living is interested in making some money to be able to stay in business, which is, as I mentioned before, not an easy thing to do as a publisher these days, with Facebook and Google between them taking up about 2/3 of all the advertising spend that happens. So Southern Living can make money by charging a subscription to people who come to its website, or doing e-commerce, or putting ads on its page, or some combination thereof. There are no rules about it. So it's whatever they choose to do. Most sites, especially ones that aren't sort of the best known, like New York Times has a lot of paying subscribers, but something like Southern Living is a little more smaller, more niche publication. It would probably use advertising to monetize its site. So what happens is this ad here is placed by Canon. So Canon is the brand and Southern Living is the publisher. So what we do is we just connect those two, not just, it's a complicated process.
There's a lot going in between, I'm sure.
Right? So the part that blew my mind about this when I started was I just didn't realize how complicated this is. Like I just sort of thought that like Canon and Southern Living, like Canon was just on this page, and when I go to this page, like I would of course see the Canon ad because it was already there. But actually that's not what happens at all. In about 90% of cases, what happens is this ad is run what's called programmatically, and TripleLift is a programmatic first company. And what that means is everything's done electronically, basically automatically. And this ad, when a person goes to this Southern Living site on their phone or on their computer or tablet, whatever app, the Southern Living sends a signal to advertisers saying, hey, I've got somebody on our site who wants to bid to be able to place this ad. And then an auction happens, and the high bidder gets the right to place this ad. And that all has to happen in 0.3 of a second. The ad has to get shown in 0.3 of a second is the rule of thumb. Otherwise, people will leave the page if it's too slow to load. So there are actually, in a lot of cases, like thousands of brands who bid on this space, and the dollars on it are very small. It'd be about 1/20th to 1/30th of a cent to be able to place this ad here. So it's a volume game. You need to have a lot of views and a lot of ads from a lot of people on your site in order to make enough money to via business. And this honestly kind of blew my mind when I started. I was like, wait, like that ad wasn't there? Like Canon didn't know I was there, suddenly like what happened? And like, no, reload the page and you'll see it next time you get like a different ad, maybe from somebody else. It could be like a car commercial or something. And this all happens, and as I said, like there's an auction going on. And even more incredible to my mind was that multiple auctions happen. So we're one supply side platform. Southern Living probably runs multiple auctions, usually 5 to 6 auctions, parallel auctions. So like whoever wins our auction, we pass that winning bid, in this case Canon, down to Southern Living, and that bid competes against 5 other auctions happening in parallel. And so the winner of those 5 auctions gets to place the ad. And at the end of the month, we invoice Canon, like 1/30th of a cent, and we take a revenue share for ourselves and we pass the rest on to the publisher, southernliving.com. I seriously couldn't believe it. Even now thinking about it, I'm like, seriously, that's how it happens? Like, that's so complicated. Like, how can that work? And the answer is you need middlemen technology providers like us who make it work. We make it possible for, in this case, Southern Living just to connect to us, and then we connect. There's actually one more step in the chain, demand side platforms that connect us, supply side platforms, to the brands here, which is in this case Canon. So Canon is what we call the buy side, and Southern Living is the sell side, the supply side. And so we're a marketplace, we need both. So you need liquidity. So it's all about balancing supply and demand. So yeah, that happens many times a day. It's funny, the first week that I started, I went home and I told my wife, I said, this is a pretty small company I started at. They did 200 million of these auction requests today. And she said, that can't be right. That's way too high a number. That company's small, 200 million. I said, yeah, you're right. Maybe I misheard, or maybe that was like the full year or something. And I went back the next day and I said, 200 million. Is that really what we did? And oh yeah, 200 million. Well, that was a long time ago. Here's where we are now. So now we're doing about 40 to 45 billion a day. And we're still actually one of the fairly small, relatively, we're growing fast, but still one of the smaller SSPs out there. So the scale in this industry is totally crazy. It's absolutely amazing. We're processing 45 billion auction requests a day. So wow.
Yeah, my mind is pretty blown right now by this whole concept.
The fact that it happens in real time, and like all these like auctions happen, and like all this settlement has to happen, and all the collection and working capital cycles are long in this industry. People take months to pay, and so it's a complicated business.
The fact that there's the bidding or auctioning process behind the scenes, and it all happens in 0.3 of a second for a website to load. But there's not just one auction. You said they win the bid for TripleLift, and then it goes up to against competitors for the website of Southern Living, who they've also engaged with. So the fact that there's that process all behind the scenes in 0.3 of a second is wild.
Latency and page load are major factors in this business.
So to put it a little bit in perspective, from the numbers you provided earlier, so you were doing 200 million requests a day.
Yeah.
And that was roughly 15 million, you
said? So we were doing, when I started, it was 200 million a day bid requests, and now it's 45 billion a day. So $1 trillion a year. Last year we did a little over $1 trillion.
$1 trillion
requests.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and we have to process every one of those. We're hosted at Amazon Web Services currently, and every single time we have to listen to all of those bid requests and process them in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So
now all this is obviously automated by computing power. All this is obviously automated.
Completely automated.
But what's the difference here between I guess this auctioning process than like targeted ads? So what's that kind of process? And do you guys work in that space as well? Because I know, for instance, if I go to a website, it may be an advertisement for a company I was on my computer last night, or something to that effect.
That's a great question. So that's just a certain set of advertisers use that as a tactic. It's called retargeting. People can retarget through TripleLift. It's not, we're sort of agnostic to the tactics that advertisers choose to use. So we don't do the retargeting, but people can use TripleLift to do retargeted advertising. It's got pros and cons. one of the big challenges that's facing retargeting actually as a tactic. Well, first of all, it's got pros and cons. Pros are it can be very effective. The cons are like it can feel really creepy to people, right? Like the
Like
canonical
they're
example,
watching me. That's what everyone says, right? There, someone's
the sheep
watching.
stalking you around the internet,
Yeah.
right? It can be really annoying. Like you already bought that product, and that they don't have sort of a closed loop attribution set up. Like they don't realize, so they're targeting you for something you've already bought or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so the a major challenge of facing that tactic of retargeting is that it relies on cookies, right? And cookies, generally speaking, are going away because of privacy concerns. In my opinion, honestly, like misplaced privacy concerns. Privacy is very important and is key. And I love privacy just as much as the next person, but the information that's passed around in cookies is actually fairly fairly benign generally, and so it's probably a little misguided. The real privacy concerns are, the platforms like Facebook have like tons of information about people because people willingly give it to them. Like, how many, often people say how many kids they have or where they live or all kinds of things like that. I mean, much more concerning. And so I think a lot of these anti-cookie initiatives are sort of designed thinking about like the Facebook use case and like Cambridge Analytica and that sort of thing. And like we just don't have any ability to obtain any sort of data like that. And but without cookies, retargeting basically can't happen. So it's definitely a concern for advertisers that use retargeting as a tactic. So there you
Okay.
go. So TripleLift would be affected to the extent that those advertisers would be affected. It would be affected. It would no longer be working in advertising generally, and we're thinking hard about different approaches in light of the probably inevitable decline of cookies.
Mhm. Yeah, the privacy debate is always something that's kind of interesting because in today's day and age, with various corporations being hacked or something, and people are starting to become a little more protective of their data, but then they'll go and sign up for Facebook and not
Yeah,
realizing that that data is just
and
being sold to third parties.
I should distinguish between first and third party cookies. So first party cookies are where you personally say, yes, I consent to this, and third party cookies are where you don't know that there's like an advertising provider involved. That you go to a website and the publisher is using a third party like TripleLift, and you're not aware of it. So that's called a third party cookie. So the focus around cookies is around third party cookies, not first party. So by the way, that's why you will inevitably have seen now when you go to a website, well,
Mhm.
several things, but one thing is every publisher basically tries to get you to sign up for their newsletter or something, right? And the reason for that is that's first party information. They can then drop a first party cookie on your computer and continue to do targeted advertising or other things around advertising with a little bit more insight into who you are. And that's not going to go away, first party cookies. So publishers know that third party cookies probably are going away. We say the cookie is crumbling. And so, they're getting increasingly desperate to get people to sign up and give their information to
Yep.
them.
Yeah, I feel like
But
every
honestly,
website I go to, there's
obviously I'm interested. I have an interest in this argument, but there's really nothing. There's nothing going on with cookies. Like they're not a major privacy concern. It's a little bit misguided, as I said. Privacy is definitely a real thing, but the focus on the cookie is probably a little misplaced.
okay. That's good to know. I mean, it gives some people a little bit of assurance there.
Mhm.
Um, so
We
so
know nothing about anybody at TripleLift. Like, and we don't want to, but like literally, like we know we know nothing about you. Virtually nothing.
mhm.
So
So are there any other, I guess, business operations? I know TripleLift has some international subsidiaries. Are you guys primarily located or do most of your business in the United States, or what does that look like worldwide? Can you distinguish the differences from a user, I guess, their IP, or is it more so from a buy side slash sell side where they're located? What does
uh,
that look like?
yeah, that's a great question. So here's how our revenue looks like internationally. So you can see it's been growing, but it was sub 10%, and we jumped all the way to 13% in 2019, and we got to 14% in 2020. And we're hoping to grow that share a little bit more. North America is US plus Canada. So you can see that that's definitely the bulk of
Okay.
our activity. This is where, yeah, that's where the person on their website is located, what I just showed you there. And
Okay.
now I'm going
The
to,
user, I guess, the end user.
that's right.
Mhm.
I never like to say user, but consumer,
Where
something.
I'm located.
So now I'm going to share again. And so now I'm going to show you where by country. And I find this one of the more, again, back to this notion that like data is out of control. Like, so
Here
here
we
we've
go.
got United States was 420 million. This is through partway through December. Here are our largest ones. It's all the sort of major developed countries that you would think of. And then here are the smallest in the second table. And you can see there's like Western Sahara, which a lot of people probably didn't know was a country.
I did not.
South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. My wife and I were listening to something on NPR the other day, and they mentioned South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, and we are both like, "Have you ever heard of that?" I said, "I think that might be on like a slide that I used the other day," and it was. I went and checked, and what you can see, it's like actually, it's I can't quite see because it's blocked here, but I think it's like 40 cents or something, right? It's maybe even less, and then North Korea, this is one that really blows my mind. Like there aren't even there. I didn't think there was the internet in North Korea, but there is, and we have like a few pennies of ad spend coming from North Korea, which is crazy. So if you dig in and you look, which I've done, it's mainly like European, mainly UK. I noticed newspapers that are running there. So maybe it's like some journalists who are like in the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, and they're able to access their phones or something. I'm not really sure, but that's totally crazy. Now, keep in mind, I don't have to invoice North Korea because good luck collecting on 25 cents out of North Korea, right? I can't imagine what they'd pay me in. But this comes through those big demand side platforms that I talked about. So I'm invoicing people in, the UK or United States to and for this money here.
Hmm. Interesting, but yeah, it looks like a bulk of 420 million from the United States, and that's top line revenue.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's good to put in, I guess, perspective where the users are and kind of ads are being targeted from. Um,
They're
so I guess,
everywhere is the point, right? Like
yeah,
they're literally
everywhere. Everyone uses the internet,
everybody
so
everywhere around the world. Remember, these are people who are like not just on the internet seeing ads, like they're seeing TripleLift ads, like little TripleLift, like somehow we have ads showing, in like St. Helena here and Comoros and North Korea. So again, just like
40 cents from North Korea. There you go.
when I tell people joining, that we're recruiting for the finance team, I tell them, I say, from a finance perspective, this is kind of a dream job. Like, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Having to handle this level of data, it's really something. It's really pushed my business intelligence chops. I'll tell you, I've really developed them in the last 5 years because out of necessity.
Yeah, it's interesting to put it in perspective like that. So for the international piece of it, I know there are a few international subsidiaries of the company. Is the primary benefit of that for a tax perspective, or what was the reasoning? I don't
What?
for creating international subs for revenue.
Tax is overrated. That stuff is, unless you're like Apple, that's honestly, I've wasted time like chasing like tax,
I don't think our
and
tax folks would be
around the
too happy to
world
hear
and
that.
Irish inversion and all that. And honestly, since the changes in the corporate tax rates in the US in like 2017, like there's really not much there. Tip though to all you CFOs out there, the money is hiding in plain sight. It's SALT, state and local. That's where I found like the money is when you're profitable like we are. You start to think about that.
Hmm.
So no, they're sales offices, right? All of our international offices, all of our operations are handled out of the US, but we have, sales, both supply side and demand side, business development in all of those countries. So
Okay.
UK, France, we had in Germany, Australia, we're going into Singapore this year, a couple other European countries, Canada.
Oh, very
So
nice.
they,
So
they generate demand and supply
expanding
for
all
us.
over.
Yeah, yeah. International is difficult, man.
Hmm.
International is difficult. The two most difficult things I think in this business, and honestly probably in a lot of business, are international. If you have international operations, there's just so much, like so many things you have to think about. Think hard about going international. Like it makes sense if you can do it and you've got enough demand that, but be careful. International is challenging. And I was gonna say the other one is like credit management, but we'll talk about that later maybe. But
So as I think this is a great transition as we're talking about international operations. The 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic How has that impacted the company, right? So it affected the entire world, and TripleLift is all around the world. So what kind of impact has that had on the company? What were your main concerns as this kind of really started to come to fruition in early 2020,
Yeah,
January, February? It really, I think, hit the United States come March when things started to get shut
yeah.
down. What were your main concerns, and how did you guys kind of transition to where you are today and where the company is?
Yeah, it was, I mean, obviously existential for us, like many people. We had a notion that there was going to be like a significant, market correction. Now, we weren't trying to time it, but there've been a lot. I've been through a couple of major recessions before in my career. I mentioned I've been around for a while before. So dot-com bust, and then 2009, the Lehman Brothers stuff,
Mhm.
and the Great Recession, it was called then. And so, it'd just been a long time. It had been 10 years. And so I happened to give a presentation to our management team in early February about how we were thinking about an potential economic downturn and what we're doing to prepare for it. And the answer was like, we knew one would eventually come, but we weren't going to try to time it, but we were going to try to, and we weren't going to try to time it because then you just miss too much upside. Because honestly, like I thought one has been coming for the last few years, and every year it hasn't happened until last year. And although I did say, I said, as soon as it happens, I'm going to be the first one to say, I told it first, right?
Yeah, right.
5 years
You're
ago, I told
right.
you
First
all.
one there.
I was the smart guy, and inevitably, I'm sure people are going to claim that after this is all over. So what we did do though, which was smart, was we maintained where possible operational flexibility. And the main place where that manifested itself was we did not get into any long-term office leases. And so we did not have anything for more than the max one in all of our offices. We have about, I don't know, 10 offices or so like that we pay for around the world. And the maximum time we had on any of them was 12 months when this hit. So that was great. And our big one in New York, we had only about 7 months to run. So that helped us. That gave us a lot of flexibility. So those are, and that came with a cost. Like you pay a premium for having that kind of flexibility. Uh, but that was good. So anyhow, so when it hit, I mean, it was cataclysmic, right? Like, we've never seen anything like this in the last century. And it was terrifying, and from a business perspective. And this one was different because it was terrifying, like literally from like a health perspective, right? And so, I came down maybe with the virus, I don't know, but I was really sick at the start of it. So I went and sequestered myself in a hotel, and, all hell was breaking loose, and as you would expect. And it was very dramatic the day we left the office. We gathered the management team together, and we're like, we'll keep an eye on this. We don't know. We don't know. And then my phone rang. It was the landlord. He said, somebody on the floor below you has just tested positive. We're like, everybody hold
Wow.
on for a second. And, we gathered everybody, and within an hour, we shut the office down, and we never went back. And, so there I am in a hotel, and our executive team was meeting, I mean, every single day, multiple times. And we we came up with a plan. So our revenue is very cyclical, sort of quarterly, and the end of first quarter was coming, and we knew that there was quite a bit of spend still happening, but it felt like it was like sort of zombie spend. I was calling it, like zombie campaigns that were already paid for and were still running, and like what was going to happen on April 1st, which is always a drop in revenue for us. And unlike a lot of SaaS companies, like we don't have contracts with our customers, which I think is great. I think that's super customer friendly, but like you are not mandated to buy or sell a specific amount on TripleLift. It's come and use it. Those auctions that I talked about, if you win the auctions, and then you get money, and if not, you go somewhere else. So, that left us exposed, obviously, not having those contracts. And it's terrifying. And so we spent a ton of time trying to make our best estimate of what was going to happen to demand on April 1st. And we thought that it was going to drop. And our best information was maybe it was going to drop like 30% below where we originally expected. And so what we had to make really hard decisions, and we had to reduce our costs. We had previously planned to make a 10% EBITDA profit margin for the year. That went out the window, and we were just going to try to break even. And we're not a company that's raised a ton of money. We've raised $16.5 million, so very little in the scope of how large we've gotten. And so we didn't have like $50 million in the bank or anything like that. And you know, was absolutely existential to the company. Like we had no idea what was coming. So we had to make some really hard decisions. And so we did some small layoffs, which is very painful. Those were people who just thought like were unfortunately in positions that were permanently no longer fits, mainly office management, which was rolled up to me. So those were like friends of mine that I'd worked with for a long time, a lot of them. And you know, we had to give severance packages to those people, and then a larger chunk of people we put on furlough, and so we furloughed those people for up to, I mean, at the time it was 3 months, we said, and so they were able to continue to get benefits, but no pay. Everybody else took a pay cut, you know, up to 25%, and 25, you know, for executives and senior managers, and that was it. And so like we thought that, you know, if we hit our, you know, our new number, we could stay, you know, stay in business at that level. And geez, like I'll be darned, but like we nailed it. That 30% drop from our previous plan, like that is exactly where it landed. So that first day of April 1st, I was like watching like our spend like every minute practically. And I mean, it was terrifying. And you know, again, like not terrifying from a health perspective, other than like the actual health perspective. So I don't want to like over dramatize it versus like people who are like real frontline responders. Like they obviously had it, you know, much more difficult than I did or anyone at TripleLift did. But from a business perspective, you know, everything that we'd worked for all these years, that was absolutely terrifying. We had no idea what was coming next. But um, we did manage to get, you know, we did manage to estimate where that was going to come in. So I have a really interesting chart here that I'm going to show you.
Just for the listeners, really quickly, that 30% drop, was that your because I know you said on April 1 with the cyclical sales, was that expected, or is that below what you already expected the drop to
We
be? What was
dropped
it?
it 30% additionally below what we expected.
Okay, so on
Yeah,
top of your already expected somewhat drop.
that's right. That's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So so this chart is interesting. It shows how we did against our original plan every day of last year. That's the green line, and then this pink line is the cumulative total for the year. So you can see that we started the year out like gangbusters. You know, January was like, you know, well over 100% the plan, and then February I think maybe we just had like a little bit more aggressive plans, but like we were like hanging in around 100%, and then you know stuff started to happen in mid-February, and this is where the trouble, you know, came, and stuff was already petering off pretty badly through March. And then you can see like it just fell off a cliff, right? April and May. So we were down as low as like 50% of our original plan. And, you know, so here's the cumulative number. So we were down here, you know, 25% below plan. And then, geez, like it was an unbelievable. It's like a light switch, right? The first week of June, it just snapped back. I mean, look at this slope of this green line here.
I was
Just,
just going to say,
oh,
what triggered that? Because that is a drastic increase, basically right back to 100%, and it looks
that's
like it
right.
is around the June timeframe.
That's right. It was just that advertisers sat on the sidelines for 2 months while everybody figured out what the heck was going on, and then you know, things were arguably recovering a little bit. There was a lot of reopening going on here, you know, arguably too soon or whatever, but like that's what was happening. And advertisers, you know, advertisers are in the business of advertising and reaching their customers, and so like they wanted to do it. They hadn't been doing it on a relative basis for 2 months, and so they got back in the game, and you know as a result we did too. And so here we are, you know, at about 100%. Now at this point we actually started early. As soon as we saw this, we started bringing people back, the furloughs. So some people came back within a month, and within 3 months everybody was back. And so you know we were good here through Q2 the summer, and then Q3 was really strong, like really strong, as you could see. And Q4 was strong, like you know, it was good. This is relative to plan on an actual basis, like Q4 is bigger than Q3, etc. And in Q3 we made the decision, since you know we were turning ahead of plan, we made the decision that we paid everybody for the missed pay, right? So we paid everybody who had taken a salary cut, well, which was everybody. Right? They got a lump sum amount. We did it at the end of September, and everybody who'd been on furlough, well, they'd already been brought back, but we actually paid them for all of the time that they were out on work. And you know that felt great, obviously, and everybody was happy. And I just feel, extremely fortunate to be working somewhere where I was able to work and work safely from home. Again, I feel incredibly grateful for the people who are out there on the front lines, putting their health at risk much more than I ever was, of course. And incredibly fortunate, and then incredibly fortunate to work somewhere where we had the financial wherewithal to treat people at TripleLift so well. Paid everybody, like I said, for all of the money that had been forgone, and it ended up being a solid year from a headcount perspective, though. So things did, excuse me. We'd always just grown. Where's my headcount one here? So this is only 2018. As I said, we were like 60 people when I started, but up, and it just always looked like this, and then all of a sudden, boom, right? And then we recovered most of the way by the end of the year, and now we're back in full growth mode for 2021 is our plan. But we did, for the first time in TripleLift's history, of this downward.
So as of year end, you're pretty much back to where you were pre-pandemic as far as headcount, if not more.
Yeah, that's right. But we plan to be almost 100 people more by now, right? Our 2020 plan was very aggressive.
Continued the steady growth, yeah.
Yeah, our 2020 plan was 600 million, and we ended up getting to about 555. So we didn't quite get all the way back to our original plan, but I mean, all things considered, boy, we'll take it.
I mean, yeah, still very successful year given what has happened, and I will give you and TripleLift a bunch of credit for that catch up, that true up in fees and pay. That I'm sure that went a very long way and made a lot of people happy. So definitely some credit goes there, as especially because I mean those 2 months there, or 2.5 months from March to end of May, were very scary for a lot of folks. So
yeah, we lost a ton of money in those months. Lost a ton of money, but
like you said, just constantly checking your spend and making sure every day you're just staying on top of incoming and outgoing funds. But one thing I wanted to touch on that you spoke about earlier was the short-term leases. So very, very great point in kind of noticing that you're expecting somewhat of a downturn and maintaining those short-term leases. But what does that look like now? How has the company transitioned to?
It looks like no offices now, no office space, everybody at home. We still have one left. That one that I mentioned was 12 months, so that comes off the books in February. Nobody, we're just sitting there empty. It's a co-working space and in Los Angeles. And other than that, though, like, we're pocketing all that money. At this point, honestly, like rent expense, I mean, it's big, but it's not, we're so big now relatively that it's not like kind of existential to us, to our profitability, but it's certainly helpful. It's, this is a weird new world working from home. Me personally, I've kind of like done one of these, like I hated it at first, just hated it. But it's just not me. I kind of like to be around people and be in the middle of things. But I've sort of gotten used to it, and we've got a rhythm now. We've done a lot of thinking about how to make it as optimal as possible for people. We gave everyone $1,000 for like work from home upgrades to their work setups and things like that. But it's much more than that. It's more just a sort of holistic program to try to make people effective. And I kind of like it, to be honest, now. But one of your questions I know is like, what are we going to do? And we don't know. But what we've told everybody is it was going to be a year. So we told everybody you're not going to be required back in the office until July. We said that last July, so people could plan. Like for me, like planning school years was important. And so like I left New York. I was in a small 2-bedroom apartment in New York, and that wasn't going to work with 3 small kids. So we had some family in New Hampshire, so we moved to New Hampshire for the year. And we've told everybody that you'll be expected back in your office no sooner than July, and back in the office where you originally were assigned to. It's interesting, people who've joined us since the pandemic started who have never been in an office at TripleLift, like we've told them the same thing, like you may be required to go to an office, but this is some delicate territory right now. Like we don't know exactly when, we don't know what the office is going to look like. We don't know where it's going to be other than, the same cities we were in before. So a lot of questions still up in the air. And this is a major issue for people, as you can imagine, right? Like trying to organize my life here. Help me out. But
I was saying we're in a similar boat as I think a lot of companies are. Is like there's that tentative due back date where we're expecting things to be quote unquote back to normal, and we'll be back in the office. Whether that's a full-time or a hybrid model, we don't know. We'll wait and see. But one thing that is kind of pressing, I mean, we've been in this stage now for roughly 9 months. What is your gauge on the mental health of employees, right? Are you doing daily video calls? Or how are you checking in? I mean, with 300 plus employees, there's a lot to keep track of there. What do
Yeah.
you think has worked for you guys to transition to this full remote model?
Right. So, first of all, it's not really my area. We're so big now. We have like a really big, well-functioning human resources team, and they're kind of take on the lead on this along with our CEO. And but we always did a weekly. We called it a chat and choose, like an all hands at lunchtime, and that's continued. And I have a daily stand up with the accounting team and have one-on-ones with everybody else in the various parts of my team. And it's there's no magic bullet here, right? But communication, over communication, empathy, all of those things. But definitely, a lot of face-to-face Zoom calls, not this WebEx where I can't hide my messy background and get my gray hair touched up.
So looking ahead now, right? We looked at the
Sorry, one last
pandemic.
point on that. So we definitely been flexible about like work from home situations, right? And I told my people in like early on, like, and I didn't realize this, but this actually wasn't a message that I don't think every team at TripleLift was passing along, which was like, you should take time out during the day to do stuff, right? Like, because there's definitely a inclination to just like stay and work like the whole time, especially if you don't have kids. Just like, I don't know, I'm on my computer, there's nothing else to do, like just work, 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 work. Then I always told everybody, like, go out in the middle of the day, like whatever, like you don't need to check with me, like fit it into your schedule and like don't ask, right? Block it off on your calendar and that sort of thing. And I absolutely did the same thing. For me, it was like a nap walk with our newborn in a stroller every day from 2 to 3. And so you have to sort of do things like that. Otherwise, just sitting at the same place. I laugh now sometimes. I say to my wife, I'm like, did I get my 10,000 steps in today? When I've gotten like 50 steps in, I've gone like nowhere. It's pathetic. So
Just sitting at the desk all day. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, especially for those that don't have children, you can just work, 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 work. If you're in that,
no, it's worse if you have kids. If you don't have kids, you've got no excuse not to go out and get some exercise. But
that's my point. Is like you don't even think about it. But to have families, it kind of forces you to do other things, which makes it harder. I mean, trying to juggle work, kids at home, the school at home. It's a tough environment for a lot of folks.
it's been tough. It's not my cup of tea, that's for sure.
So looking at 2021 and I guess even into partially 2022, what are your goals? I mean, we looked at the operations and how you projected 600 million for 2020. You're kind of just under that given the pandemic, which is still, I think, widely successful, almost breaking even for that part. But what do
Oh
you?
no, we were profitable last year. We were profitable because we made it most of the way back to our plan. And remember, like
Mhm.
we didn't grow. We ended up with the same headcount that we started with. So, and we didn't have a lot of expenses that may or may not come back. Travel and entertainment is big in this industry, right?
Yep.
That didn't happen. We did less marketing. There was just a lot less expense. So it was actually ended up being a very profitable year for us. Just sort of backed into it that way. So yeah, we had a good year.
So what does that look like for the current year? I mean, are you projecting similar numbers as prior year? Are you projecting increases? I mean, we're still in this
TripleLift,
pandemic
we
somewhat.
only ever project huge increases and we only ever hit them. So it's the same this year. I won't reveal what the exact target
I'm
is.
not, I'm just, yeah, I wasn't asking for
It's
specifics, but I'm just
much
curious.
bigger. It's much, much bigger than last year. Much bigger.
So you're taking the figures from, I guess, Q3 and Q4 as kind of your tailwind into the new year. That's your expectations.
A lot of thought went into it. It's a complicated, at the scale that we're at, it's complicated to forecast numbers, but a lot of inputs, including Q3 and Q4 actuals, and just momentum and traction with individual customers and our top 300 brands and our top 100 publishers, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot goes into it. And yeah, it's going to be, and so, we're only 12 days in now, but we're exceeding plan so far. So I'm thrilled.
There we go. Starting the year hot. So a couple more questions before we wrap this up. I did want to ask, outside of last year, right, where we had the significant hurdle, first time in, I don't even know, last 100 years or so, what other hurdles have you come across during your time here at TripleLift? So last 5 or 6 years, what have you come across? How did you kind of attack those, and what methods do you find best that you think our listeners would be curious to know about, because they might be facing those same challenges now?
Yeah, so I'll flip that a little because at TripleLift, so I've been here a little over 5 years now, and it's been a strangely charmed existence. I mean, we went through that pandemic, and even that somehow we came out, pretty well. And it's just been up and to the right, as we say in finance, the whole time here. And so we haven't really, I personally haven't dealt with anything like major challenges. And I think the reason I didn't is because we adhered to some really key principles that I will say, what that I'll pass along, which one of your questions was like, what would you advise people or whatever in a startup? So if you do these things, they will help, and they've helped TripleLift be successful. So I haven't had to deal with some of these major problems. And then I would say then like one is kind of a cliche, but it's true. And it's like pick big markets, which is like everybody says that. It's like pick big market opportunities. And like that sounds like trite. And like of course you want to, but other than when I worked in energy, this is the first time where I was like, oh wow, like this is a really big market. Like there's over $100 billion of digital ad spend in North America every year. Now, the majority of that goes to Google and Facebook, hopefully not forever, but right now. But that still leaves tens of billions for the rest of the market. It's just a big market. And so there's just a ton of opportunity. And you kind of, there's just a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of different ways you can go. And so that's kind of like good. So I look back now, and I worked my first CFO job. It was a great company and a great founding team. And like, I think we were just too narrowly focused. And I think if we'd been like much broader focused, like rather than trying to solve like one specific fintech problem, just try to find big market opportunities when you're dreaming up your plan. Number one. Number two, because there's just a lot more room to make mistakes when there's a big market. And by the way, what TripleLift does right now is not what the founders originally started doing. This is like a shoulder market. It took them a couple of years to really like hone in to this point of what I'm talking about. And then number two, well, TripleLift is fortunate because our founders had the wisdom to bet on two big macro trends, which are one, are native ad formats, and number two is programmatic taking over the world. When they founded the company, programmatic was less than 10%. That way of transacting these ads, via auction that I described, was less than 10% of the market. Now it's 90%. So, get on those big tailwinds, make smart bets like that will help. But
And
aside from
what year
those,
was that? When was that 10%? Was that when TripleLift was started, like
2013,
2014?
2014. Yeah, now it's 90% of a pie that's been growing bigger and bigger. And then, but some things that I would say that like any company will apply to any company. I have like 3 rules I always like tell people, and one of them I'm not so sure anymore about. So let's get to the one I'm not so sure about anymore, which is like founders show up, executives show up, show your faces. Like as soon as you start being successful, there's going to be all kinds of demands on your time. You're going to be asked to be on boards and nonprofits and do all kinds of things. And those are great things usually, right? And it's good. Like, but every time you're not in, either you're not involved, like the decision-making process potentially will grind to a halt, and that will cause problems. And people will notice that you're not as engaged, and they will be not as engaged. Now, I don't know if that's even the case anymore now. We're like all at home. Like I used to tell people, like, you need to come into the office. Like all you like founders and other executives, like you need to be here and show an example. I'm not so sure about that one anymore. Maybe I was wrong all along. But you do still need to be engaged. As soon as you're not engaged, your people are going to feel like, why are they going to be engaged if you're not 100% there? Number two is be decisive. Whatever you do, be decisive. Like most companies just are not decisive, and TripleLift, we're so decisive. I give the credit for that goes to our founders. First time founders, I don't know how they do it, but they're so decisive. And like we every year like make sort of existential decisions about where we think things are going in the industry, and we place our bets on that, up into cannibalizing existing lines of business. Like that's part of the plan. Like you read that you're supposed to do that as a business, well, you should do it. And if you make smart bets and you execute on them, like you'll be rewarded, especially in a big marketplace. So, but be decisive. And that is the number one reason why we were so successful getting through this pandemic. We were so decisive. We were so engaged as an executive team and so decisive. It was great. Like it was textbook how we responded to this crisis. And it's easy not to. It's easy to have like senior leadership kind of go into a bunker and you don't hear too much from them, or you're not communicating enough. And so be decisive, whatever it is you're doing, not just in a crisis, be decisive. Don't like let bad bets linger move on, etc. And then the last one is like a personnel HR type thing, which is there's two ways. It's going to sound a little like Machiavellian, but there are two ways to get ahead, I've noticed, in the world. And one is to be like supportive in the professional world. One is to be like supportive and try to make people around you like better and try to help them do better at their jobs and help the company. And the other one is to like backstab people and try to like look better yourself by making other people look worse. And you'd be like, well, everyone will be like, well, I want the first one, right? Like that's obviously the better way. Yes, it is the better way. But the second way of like making other people look bad can be super effective. In fact, I think it's like probably more effective, like at least in the short term. Like so, and it will come. And TripleLift like had a great culture. We always had a great culture, and I didn't see any of that for the longest time. And I used to tell people, I'd be like, when the CEO, I'd say like, this will come. Like we've lived this charmed existence where it hasn't happened yet, but it will. And when it does, we need to not allow it to fester. And because if we allow it, then it will propagate because people will see that that's the way you get ahead of TripleLift, right? Like I could whisper in my boss's ear and say, that guy over there, like I just don't know about him. And like in a way that kind of like I'll be like his work product, it just wasn't great. Like kind of makes me seem kind of smart, doesn't it? Right? Like, and so like wow, like
planting those little seeds.
Yeah, the wrong CEO who doesn't take that right is like, wow, that guy Simon knows what he's talking about. Like he knows even about another area that's not him or his area, whatever it is, right? Like, and that kind of like political maneuvering versus like me and go and talk to that person like quietly one-on-one and be like, hey, what about this? Or find ways to help that person be successful in his or her role. So you want people who do that. And by the way, like I think human nature is more like the second way, kind of like gossip about people and put people down. Like I have to catch myself doing it. I'm like, no. I want to be first person. I want to be that supportive person who just focuses on the positives and tries to put people on my team, at least in positions to be successful rather than to fail, and around the whole company. I want the company to be successful, and I want to do that by helping people be successful. But you have to guard against that second persona, and you cannot allow it to happen. Once it propagates, like it'll be everywhere in your organization, and you're just going to be a mediocre organization at best.
Yeah, and I think that's part of almost human nature to go that second route. So it's nice that you said like
100%.
think before you act, right? You
gotta 90% of people. I have to force myself to be that first type of person.
It's definitely not easy. Yeah, it's
But
tough.
I do it. And it's like a conscious discipline, and don't allow, as a founder, do not allow that second type of behavior to even to exist within your organization, let alone be rewarded.
100%. I totally agree. And I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. So my last question is always what tips or tricks you gave, and those 3 tips right there are all fantastic. For not just founders or executives, for anyone, top to bottom. It's important to remember that all throughout your career.
Be decisive, show up and be engaged, and be the person who makes everybody better.
Exactly. Well, I think that pretty much just wraps up today's episode. Thank you, Simon, for joining me. Where can people go to learn more about the company or yourself? Is it TripleLift.com?
Yeah. If you're not in the industry, that's going to be complicated. I invite anybody to email me questions. I'm active in the New York Tech CFO group, and I'm at simon@triplelift.com. And thanks to you guys. Witham has been a great partner. I didn't know Witham before I joined TripleLift. It was recommended to me by our outsourced finance team that was running finance when I arrived, and it's been one of the best decisions I made since I joined TripleLift. Shout out to Melissa and her team. You guys have been fantastic getting us through to where we are now. It's really been a wild ride. So thank you.
Of course. Awesome. Well, thanks again, and we will see you on the next episode of Founded in Tech.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in. If you liked it and want to hear more, you can follow us and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Founded in Tech.